Hey friends, Taylor again. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. If you have been here before, welcome back. We are so glad that you are joining us for service this weekend. We are in week 3 of FAM, and it's going to be a really great weekend. This week, we are talking about how we all play an important part in our families. We have been following the story of Joseph, and we are going to pick back up as he has the opportunity for payback. What will Joseph do? Let's check it out and see.
Hey, welcome back. It's been a week or so since we last hung out with the Ellis family, and you've probably spent some time with your family. Some of that time has probably been awesome, and some of that time has probably been a little less than awesome. This series is to remind us what we've kind of known all along. There's no such thing as a perfect family. The Bible is full of messed up families, and we've been looking at Joseph's family as an example during this series. So far in this series, we've learned that your family doesn't determine your future. You do. We have learned some things about how you can choose to react to and treat your family, and how you trust and obey God along the way impacts how life will turn out for you. Whether you come from a super awesome family or one that is more tough, you play an important role in helping your family be the best it can be. This week in the Ellis home was a tough one. It's the week that progress reports get sent out, and Braden is stressed. Braden has a bunch of missing assignments and needs to make up a ton of work to have passing grades in all of his classes. He isn't sure how he's going to make up all these missing assignments in a week, and comes up with an idea of how to finish them quicker. His conscience is saying it's not a good idea, but he ultimately decides to go for it. He decides it's the only way and texts a friend in each one of his classes who are also missing assignments. He asks if they want to each do half of the assignments and copy the other half from each other. They of course say yes and commit to the agreement. The next day, Braden opens his Bible app to read the verse of the day, and it's Proverbs 3, 5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Immediately, he wishes he hadn't read that verse. He was so convicted. He knows it's not God's will to cheat on these assignments. It would be so much easier to go through the plan and have A's and B's on his progress reports, but he decides to back out and come clean to his parents. He sits his parents down to tell them about where his grades are at before they even get the progress report. They were proud of him for doing the right thing and forgave him, but felt some consequences were appropriate. Especially since Jade thinks they don't really ever punish Braden. So they took away all technology and time with friends until all of his work is made up. Chances are you have been in Braden's shoes. Most times the wrong decision is the easier decision. Even though it's easier, it's even more important that you practice doing what's right even when you don't want to. Even though our families get a ton of stuff wrong, there is a ton of right stuff God wants us to practice. The harsh reality is this: your family getting stuff wrong doesn't let you off the hook to try to get stuff right. You are responsible to do your part to help your family function well. You are responsible to do the things in your life that God wants you to do, period. The Bible is full of all sorts of right kinds of things that God expects from us. God expects us to honor our parents, even though we don't want to. God expects us to be patient and kind and generous, even when we don't want to. God expects us to look for ways to make peace and diffuse conflict and anger, even though we don't want to. And simply put, God expects us to do what's right, even when we don't want to. In Joseph's life, he was constantly faced with opportunities to do the wrong thing. In one really big example, he had an opportunity to have an affair with a married woman. She was beautiful, powerful, and saying no to her advance cost him his freedom because she accused him of rape and had him thrown in prison. It would have been easy for Joseph to do the wrong thing. He could have made up all sorts of excuses for doing the wrong thing, like his family was a mess, they sold him into slavery, he deserved some fun in life, etc. But he did what was right. There's a little part in the verses from earlier that says, seek his will in all you do. Seeking God's will in all we do basically means trying to do what we know that he wants us to do. It's important stuff. But it's not easy, which is why we need to practice. The same way we would practice our sport that we want to be good at is the same as how we would practice doing right even when we don't want to. Here's another thing to practice. Practice holding on to trust very tightly. If Braden had gone through with copying those assignments and his parents found out later, he would have lost trust. If Braden had gone through with his plan, he also wouldn't be trusting God. He wouldn't trust God to honor his righteous choices even if the path is harder. The passage from earlier in Proverbs starts with, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding." Very few things in life test our ability to trust God and to not lean on our own understanding and thoughts more than our families. It's especially tough to trust God when we know how a family is supposed to function, but ours comes up short time and time again. How do we trust God when our parents split up, or our dad loses his job, or we have to move? How do we trust God when we can't get along with our brother or sister, or we have an older sibling who is causing conflict all the time? How do we trust God when it seems like we never live up to our parents' expectations? How do we trust God when someone in our family is a source of pain or abuse? It's not easy. It would have been totally understandable for Joseph to quit trusting God in light of his circumstances, right? His brothers sold him into slavery, and he's taken to a foreign land, but he trusts God. He ends up being purchased by a super powerful official, only to have that guy's wife accuse him of rape and have him thrown into prison. But Joseph trusted God. There's no way Joseph could understand why everything was happening the way it did. And that's why it's important to remember to trust God and not on our own understanding. Remember, we have a pretty limited perspective on things. It's hard for us to see the big picture, but God does. God knows everything. He knows what tomorrow holds and what he has in store for us. We don't have that same amount of insight and knowledge, which is why it's important for us to hold on to trust as tight as possible. Practice holding on to trust very tightly. Practice number 3 is practice forgiving your family. Yep, should have seen that one coming. If you are a follower of Jesus, he expects us to practice the art of forgiveness. And very few people in our lives give us as many opportunities to do this as the people in our families. People are holding on to grudges. Family members are refusing to forgive each other because the people closest to us are the ones who can cause the most hurt. It's understandable that it would be hard to forgive them when they wrong us, but God expects us to. He expects us to forgive. This doesn't mean that we look the other way or pretend the wrongs never happened. It doesn't mean that we keep secrets about our family that we shouldn't, especially when someone is being physically or emotionally hurt. But it does mean that we need to forgive each other. And whenever possible, figure out how to help our families be as healthy as they can be. Most of the stuff that family members refuse to forgive aren't really the big powerful things. It's usually little things that people have allowed to build up over time. It's smaller mistakes that people make and maybe don't apologize for that the family holds on to and holds against them. Here's the crazy ending to Joseph's story. You'll want to read Joseph's entire story in the book of Genesis, chapters 37 through 47. Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, and then they told their dad he's been killed by a wild animal. So for years, his dad thinks that Joseph is dead. All the while, Joseph is in Egypt, doing what's right even when he doesn't want to, and holding on to trust very tightly. He's had all sorts of ups and downs, and now he finds himself serving as Pharaoh's assistant. He's the number 2 man in all of Egypt. Then, there's a massive famine, and people are coming to Egypt looking for help. And guess who shows up? Joseph's brothers. His brothers travel to Egypt hoping to get some food, and they have to stand before Joseph to make their case. Joseph recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. Time for payback, right? This is going to be awesome, but not in the way you'd expect. Joseph forgives his brothers. He could have had them put to death right on the spot, but instead he forgives them. He has them go get his dad and their family so they can all live together in Egypt. We don't know if it was easy for him to forgive. and if he even knew he was supposed to. And we also don't know if he decided to do what was right, even if he didn't want to. But his decision to forgive his brothers changed the future for his entire family. Forgiving is hard. Forgiving oftentimes doesn't make sense, but it's what God wants us to do. You can't control everything about your family, but you can control your part in it. And your part in your family includes doing what's right even when you don't want to, holding on to trust very tightly, and forgiving your family when they mess up. So here's the thought for the week. I can play a part in my family, and practice is a good place to start.
Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe and that little notification bell so you get notified whenever we post something new. See you back here next weekend for the last week of FAM.